There are 3 things that you need to know about literature reviews as a PhD student. Firstly, you're going to be working on it throughout your PhD. Secondly, you need to get comfortable with mess. And thirdly, you need to resist the urge to write it up too soon with perfect grammar and wonderful paragraphs, because that may well be a waste of your time. In this video, I'll be going into a bit more detail about each of these points. So by the time you get to the end of it, you won't feel as intimidated by your literature review as you might be feeling now. And you're also going to be more efficient when it comes to working on your literature review, because you're not going to be wasting time on stuff that really doesn't matter at this point in time. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've been supporting PhD students for the last 20 years. And during that time, a lot of my students have said to me that the literature review is the thing that feels the most overwhelming on their PhD journey. It's the thing that they feel that they're constantly having a battle with throughout the whole doctoral process. And I think the reason why it feels like such a struggle is that many PhD students approach their literature review in the same way that they've approached literature reviews for their master's or for their undergraduate thesis. And I've got to be honest, the PhD literature review is a whole different beast, and you need to approach it in a different way. So let's dive in. The first home truth that I want to share about PhD literature reviews is that you are going to be working on it throughout the entirety of your PhD. It's not the kind of chapter where you will be able to sit down and write it and say, I'm done, I'm finished, I can now move on to my methodology. You will be fiddling around with your literature review right up until the end. You might still be twiddling with it in the days before you actually submit your thesis. So you have to get used to the fact that this is something that you can't just say done and dusted. It's something that constantly evolves throughout your PhD journey. What you know at the beginning of your PhD journey about the literature is very different from what you know at the end. And your literature review is going to have to shift and change to reflect that. Because as you discover more about your topic and more about the literature that's relevant for that topic, as well as the literature that isn't, you are going to shift and change things around. You will put some things in, you will take some things out, you will put some other things back in again. It is a constant work in progress. You'll find that some things that you never would have anticipated being important when you started out on your journey do become relevant the more that you go into the topic and the more that you discover about it. So you may need to add some sections to your literature review to accommodate that. And similarly, things that you thought were massive big deals at the beginning turn out to be not quite as important by the time you get to the end. So in those cases, you might want to condense those sections down, or you might want to remove them completely. So your literature review is constantly going to be changing throughout your PhD journey. And I think it's really, really important to make this point, because I've worked with a lot of PhD students who feel uncomfortable about their literature review not being finished or being half done or not being where they want it to be, i.e. done and dusted and put away, because you never really get to that stage with your PhD literature review until you are very close to submission. You're always going to be changing it. And I think that this is a bit of a carryover from previous dissertations that people might have done at undergraduate or at master's level. And if you've done those dissertations within, 6 to 12 months, you may well have written a literature review and then said, done, dusted, fine, move on with the next thing, because the time that you have to work on a dissertation at those levels is much more limited. But when you have a PhD, you have more time, so you will be revisiting the literature. You're going into a lot more depth about your subject and about your topic. So revisiting the literature, changing your literature review is something that you'll be doing throughout. And just know that that is fine, that is okay. Many students say to me, oh, well, I got my literature review wrong the first time round, so I've got to go back and change something. No, it is not that you got it wrong. It was an important part of the journey. That was an important stage to go through. And that was a perfectly legitimate thing to write about 6 months ago. But now that you know all of this new stuff, maybe you want to go back and change it. So don't feel like you're getting things wrong or something is half done. It is all part of the process. So be okay with it being unfinished. The second home truth that I want to share with you about PhD literature reviews is around mess and being comfortable with mess and knowing that mess is okay. So given what I spoke about in the previous point about the literature review being something that is unfinished for most of your doctoral journey, by its very nature, it's going to be messy. And you just have to be okay with that. And if you're somebody with perfectionist tendencies, and I myself speak as somebody with perfectionist tendencies, you're going to have to learn to be a bit flexible around this and learn to live with your literature review being unfinished and being messy, with one section that is, a complete state, another section that is just written in bullet points, and the whole thing is just not going to look as you would like it to look. But you have to let go of your expectations that writing PhD chapters is a case of write it finished, next one, write that finished, next one, write that finished. It really isn't like that at all. And the point that I really want to make is mess is going to be a feature of a lot of your PhD chapters as you're going through, and the literature review especially. So be comfortable with mess, be okay with mess. Mess is good, mess is fine. And I just want to share a quick analogy with you here. So it's like when you are cleaning out a wardrobe or a closet or a bedroom, and you just tip everything kind of out onto the floor or everything out onto the bed in order to be able to pick through it and sort through it. Your literature review is kind of like that, because it has to get messier before it can get tidy. And by getting everything out and seeing everything in its wonderful unfinished glory, that is the best way to be able to put things together, to make connections between particular things. So it's like having a clear out, essentially. It's like having a spring clean. You've got to get it all out to look at it. And it looks an absolute state, but it has to go through that phase before you can make it neat and tidy towards the end. So when you find yourself saying, oh my goodness, my literature review is such a mess, you are now going to follow that up with this phrase. And that is a good thing, because it means I'm making progress. The third point that I want to make is that you really want to resist the temptation to write up your literature review in its entirety, using perfect grammar and wonderful sentence structure and all of that nice stuff. Because as I've said previously, your literature review is going to change. There are things that are going to come out of it, go into it, move around in it. And if you've spent loads and loads of time in the early stages writing it up really perfectly, you're only going to have to disassemble all that later. So it is kind of a waste of your time to be doing that at this point. Instead, what you should try to do is have an outline literature review where you have a series of main headings with some bullet points underneath them that summarize the literature that relate to that heading. This kind of document is much more easy to work with as well than thousands and thousands of words of intricately written text. Because when you do revisit your literature review, when you do want to go back and change something or put something new in, you are able to just glance through it and see where that new thing might slot in. It's much easier to do that when you've got headings and bullet points than it is when you've got thousands and thousands of words of text to wade through and you're just kind of sat there scratching your head wondering where on earth this particular thing is going to go and how you need to kind of disrupt and change the structure that you've so intricately developed there in order to be able to fit it in. Now, sticking to an outline structure can sometimes be quite difficult. Firstly, because some students feel this urge to write stuff up so that they get their word count kind of ticking up right out of the gate. Other students because their supervisor is asking to actually see a written draft of something. What I would say in both of those scenarios is try and just write up one section of your literature review, one particular part of it. Because the reason your supervisor wants to see a written draft is so that they can check that you are writing to the standard that you need to be writing to, and that you are able to kind of critically analyse and do all of the wonderful stuff that PhD students need to do. So they sometimes need to see a sample, essentially, of your work. And just to quickly return to those students who feel the urge to tick up their word count and use the writing up of the literature review as a way of doing that, I really, really want to emphasise that here we should be looking at quality over volume. Okay, focus on the quality of what you're looking at, of the critical analysis and the points that you're making, rather than the actual volume of words that you're generating. Now, I've got another video that goes into a bit more detail on this, so I will pop a link to that up there, but I need to get back to the point because I've just wandered off. So yes, feeling the pressure to write up your literature review, either because your supervisor wants it or because you feel this urge to do so. Stick to one section, stick to one particular part of your literature review to get that out of your system and to give your supervisor something to look at. I also want to make a point about this outline literature review in terms of the number of headings that you should have in there, because that's a question that I get very often. Now, I think the finished written up version of a literature review should have between 3 and 5 headings in it. Now, note that I just said the written up finished version of a literature review. I think when your literature review is in draft format and you are still changing it and you're still exploring the literature and you're not, towards the end of your journey, you can have lots and lots of headings if you want them. You can have 10, 15, 20 headings, and you can then go about condensing those down throughout the process of your research journey. So by the time you get to the end, you've got between 3 and 5 main headings. But if you want to experiment, if you want to explore with additional headings as you're going through, that's absolutely fine, because you can deal with those towards the end. You can bring them together, you can take some things out, you can consolidate others. It's perfectly fine to have lots and lots of headings that you're working with during the process. That's fine. So to recap, the 3 home truths that I wanted to share with you about the literature review. Firstly, you are going to be working on this throughout your PhD, so you won't be able to just say done, finished, on to the next chapter. Secondly, get comfortable with mess, because when your literature review is unfinished, which it should be throughout the process of your PhD, it's going to be messy, but mess is good. Mess is what we want to see, because mess means progress. And thirdly and lastly, resist the urge to write up your literature review in its entirety too early on in the process of doing your PhD, because it's a waste of your time, okay? However, if you want to write up sections of it for your supervisor or just to kind of feel better yourself about academic writing, that is absolutely fine, but just restrict yourself to specific sections and don't go writing up the whole thing, because you're only going to have to dismantle that, and you would have wasted lots of your own precious time. I hope you found this video helpful and it's made you feel a bit better about where you're currently at with your literature review, or how you're feeling about your literature review. Join me in the next video, where I'll be sharing more tips and advice on navigating the messy and the magical of PhD life.